West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So on Monday, Donald Trump's stock was tanking. The gag order against Donald Trump in the Manhattan District Attorney case was expanded to expressly prevent Donald Trump from attacking the judges and the district attorney's family members. And Donald Trump was warned that he would be held in contempt if he violated the gag order and thrown in jail. And so how's Donald Trump responding on his social media? Well, he's praising Viktor Orban and bragging that his Trump sneakers are being auctioned off at an asking price of more than $450,000, which appears to be entirely made up. Yes, folks, these are the types of things that Donald Trump is doing on Monday after all of the devastating news he was hit with. So he posts this article from Newsweek that appears to be horribly researched, and it says Trump sneakers, quote, resold for $450,000 on eBay. Now, does that mean that any idiot actually purchased these sneakers for $450,000? Or does that mean they are listed by $450,000 by some idiot troll? Probably the latter, because if you actually look at what the article's saying, it says Donald Trump's golden sneakers are selling at a hugely marked up price after their launch earlier this month, with one pair on an online auction site, eBay, apparently going for more than $450,000. Yeah, the words going for is doing a lot of work here. Just like Donald Trump's social media company is going for $6 billion when in actuality its revenue, the actual metrics, was about $4.1 million for the entire 2023 and had a $58 million loss. So going for is just another kind of Trumpian word for just making a bunch of crap up. Here's what Donald Trump's posting as well. He's posting endorsements from the authoritarian in Europe, Viktor Orban, because Donald Trump likes to associate himself with Putin puppet losers, and Orban's yet another example of that. Here's a quote where Trump quotes Orban. "We would like Donald Trump to return to the U.S. presidency and bring peace to the eastern half of Europe," said Viktor Orban. Yeah, Orban, it's because you're a Putin's puppet right there, and all of Europe recognizes what an absolute loser and disaster you are. He stressed that 2024 could be a fateful year. In Brussels, in the United States, in India, and a dozen other places, people will decide what kind of leadership they want to go forward with. What is important for Hungary is that we have a great opportunity ahead of us. And I love how MAGA loves Viktor Orban and loves Hungary, which its entire GDP is less than what many American corporations make in revenue in a single year. I know that Donald Trump doesn't really understand revenue and doesn't really understand finances at all. But when you have a country like Hungary whose GDP is like 84 billion, that's not exactly a number to brag about. And I know Trump and the MAGAs love to praise Hungary and their inflation numbers when it's one of the highest in the world. But yeah, President Biden and the United States of America, I think I'd much rather prefer to be the United States, which has the lowest inflation in the world, the fastest growing economy. I think I like to be number one, like President Biden has turned America into, rather than Donald Trump, who wants us to be Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and Hungary. I think so. Donald Trump's also spending his time attacking Republicans and more moderate Republicans. Donald Trump goes, "One of the worst senators in the United States Senate is without a question Bill Cassidy, a total flake, Republican though he may be. He campaigned in the great state of Louisiana on Trump, 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 and was absolutely thrilled when aren't you guys just sick of this guy? Trump, Trump, Trump. I mean, who talks like this? I'm even going to read the rest of this message right here, but he's spending his time attacking a Republican, Bill Cassidy, because that's who Donald Trump is. Then Donald Trump he posts this: Elon Musk may endorse a 2024 candidate in the final stretch, Elon Musk tells Don Lemon in one of the most embarrassing interviews for Elon Musk ever. And then Trump posts this: Trump has an excellent team of lawyers with loyalists, trial warriors, and extremely good appellate attorneys. They are firing on all cylinders. I feel very good where we are. Where are we? Are we with Alina Habba partying in St. Bart's with the individual Dior bags, custom made, that she's making for her friends as she got paid $3.5 to $5 million from Donald Trump's political action? Is that where we are? Notice, by the way, Mike Davis lists loyalists as the number one trait. Well, here's Alina Habba partying in St. Bart's. I've showed you this clip before. Play this clip. Oh, and by the way, Alina Habba just went on a podcast recently, and I guess this is what Alina Habba, the trial lawyer who didn't even know how to introduce evidence in a trial, here's what she just had to say in the last podcast appearance she just made. Play this clip.
They want the narrative. The lawyers are dumb. This is bad. He's fraud. It's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is made up. We're in make-believe land right now.
But I suppose that was better than the previous podcast appearance Alina Habba made when she said this.
I'll tell you something. Somebody said to me, Alina, would you rather be smart or pretty? And I said, oh, easy. Pretty. I can fake being smart.
And I suppose that was perhaps better than the last podcast appearance of Donald Trump's adult man-child, Don Jr., who just went on his podcast on Rumble and just had to say this. Play the clip.
Released a statement yesterday specifically referencing trans Americans on Easter. Because they don't get enough attention in the world, folks. Literally the most protected class of Americans in all of society are the trans, right? You can murder people and have a journal and nothing's ever gonna come from it. Their motives, always unknown. I wish everyone got that benefit of the doubt.
I think it's worth noting as well that Donald Trump's post that I just shared with you come right after Justice Merchan issued the enhanced gag order against Donald Trump. Real chilling language from Justice Merchan's gag order here. This is how the New York trial court judge who will be presiding over Donald Trump's criminal case put it. One day following the issuance of the original gag order, defendant Donald Trump made several extrajudicial statements attacking a family member of this court. Contrary to the position defendant took in his opposition to the People's February 22nd, 2024 motion for an order restricting extrajudicial statements, that his statements plainly constitute court political speech on matters of great political concern and criticism of major public figures. This pattern of attacking family members of presiding jurists and attorneys assigned to his cases serves no legitimate purpose. It merely injects fear in those assigned or called to participate in the proceedings that not only they, but their family members as well are fair game for defendants' vitriol. Justice Merchan goes over to say that these threats are not hypothetical, that these threats are very real. Admonitions against Trump are not enough, nor is reliance on self-restraint. The average observer must now, after hearing defendant Donald Trump's recent attacks, draw the conclusion that if they become involved in these proceedings, even tangentially, they should worry not only for themselves, but for their loved ones as well. Think about the fact that a judge has to write that because Donald Trump can't control himself and keeps attacking the family members of judges. At the end of Justice Merchan's order, he warns Donald Trump against sanctions under contempt sanctions, that if Donald Trump were to violate this, he would be thrown in jail immediately. And Justice Merchan's making that clear. Also, it should be noted, because everything in Donald Trump's world is shady, that he was finally able to post a $175 million bond from a company known as Knight Insurance Agency. And Knight Specialty Insurance Company is owned by someone named Don Henke, the so-called king of subprime car loans. And he is one of the largest shareholders in Axos Bank. And Axos Bank is the bank that refinanced Trump's loans on Trump Tower and Doral in 2022. So that's who's ultimately, Trump had to go to the king of subprime loans in order to get in order to be able to post a bond in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. And I also previously reported on another video that as all as this is happening, Donald Trump's auditor, this is his third auditor, told in a side letter in Donald Trump's SEC filing about deep concerns about the ability of the of Trump media to continue on an ongoing basis. By the way, you take a look at all of this and you just compare them to the statements that are being made by President Biden today. I mean, just take a look with President Biden. He posted a photo of the Easter celebrations from the day before. Happy Easter egg roll from Jill, me, and the White House Easter bunnies. Jill and I spoke with our friend Al this morning about what makes the White House Easter egg roll so special each year. There's the types of messages that are coming from President Biden, like just kind of normal messages as well. And you go to the campaign website or the campaign account for Joe Biden. Those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women, and they're about to find out.
It is Tuesday, the 2nd of April of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl. And she will be seating you directly for our especially special, daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Did you know that a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Always has, and it always will. And I should remind folks that the Spanish paprika is just as fine or just as good as the Hungarian. And you could flip it around and say the Hungarian is just as good as the Spanish. Now, the Spanish has cost more because there's less of it, but they're both equal in terms of quality and what they do. Just so you know. Alrighty. So, we're going to forego a lot of the usuals that we usually go through today, and I'll let you know when that happens. But I thought I should give you a little bit of a rundown about what will be happening later on in the week, and that is what will be happening later on in the week is that on Friday we will not be having a show because I will be at the hospital while my mom is going through another procedure to I call it routing out the tubes, so they got to get the plaque out of the carotid artery, and they're going to do that mechanically, actually pull that plaque out. So I mentioned it last week about what the surgeon had talked about in terms of risks, and there's no good outcome in terms of risk by doing nothing. So we cannot do nothing. Yep, that's when a double negative sometimes works. Sometimes. But yeah, it's my mom, and she's old. We're all getting old. But she's quite a little fire plug, so maybe we'll not have to worry so much beforehand because, well, on the other hand, maybe we will. Yikes. Am I expressing some sort of concern? Yes, I am, because it's still my mom, and I'm concerned. So we want it to be a successful operation, that she comes out of it healthy, wealthy, and wise. I don't know about wealthy, but, healthy as can be. And let's not, and I don't know. Anything can happen. People go in, get get a knee, something done with their knee, and they don't walk out. And it's not because their knee is injured, it's because, well, you know what? And you know how. You never know. Worrisome. But all that aside, no show on Friday. And I have not decided what we'll have in place, but we'll have something in place to bridge us into the Hartman period. Also, I should mention here as well, in terms of, the macro aspect of Netroots Radio, is that I realize that there's a lot of tune-in and other types of advertisements that have been dropped in on the Hartman Show, and that has a lot to do with it being on the PV channel. Now, I don't want to denigrate PV channel because they're our friends, but those get dropped in automatically to be able to use certain types of streams, and that's how that works. So, I try to program for those, but oftentimes they're not on the clock. They're off a little bit. So I'm not able to program as effectively, but I try. So bear with me, and we'll get that more honed down as a couple of weeks go by. I apologize for it. It seems to be quite a bit because that's quite a bit for me. It must be for others too. All right. So all of that stated, why don't we give you a rundown about what we have in store for you here as we begin in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, should I mention also, in the chowder we put roasted corn, so beware. Soaked in a lemon and lime water bath in their husks, and then roasted in their husks. There you go. All right, what do we have in store for you for this curated part of the show, rather than the, Hey, we'll just make it up. Well, a federal judge ruled migrants flown to Martha's Vineyard by Ron DeSantis 2 years ago can sue the charter flight company. And I remember being one of those voices. Well, heck, I mean, can't they sue the charter company? And now they are. A Kansas weekly newspaper and its publisher are suing over police raids that caused the death of the paper's 98-year-old owner in her home. Remember those last summer? We do. And UPS will replace FedEx as the primary air cargo provider for the United States Postal Service. And you'd like to blame it on DeJoy, and I don't know, maybe we still can. After the break, we move to the chef's table where U.S.-funded Radio Free Asia closed its Hong Kong bureau over staff safety under the new security law. And the Austrian chancellor says the country needs to deter Russian infiltration after grave allegations of spying has emerged. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Page at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so and everything else that she does. And I should remind folks, Netroots Nation is coming up, so we'll fill you in about her and Ricky's endeavors and their time there, so stay tuned for that. Thank you, Kelly, and Ricky too. If you would look across the page from that chat room link, you'll notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills. Now, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, well, if you could send those funds to us once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay down those bills and the other costs associated with running this powerhouse of resistance. That's right. Though we be small, we resist quite powerfully, and we've been able to do it because of your generosity. And we thank you, really do thank you to all of those who have done so over these many, many years, and thus allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many, many years ago. So, all kidding aside, thank you for your generosity, and thank you to those of you who might in the future might even consider being so generous. So thank you. Thank you all. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on the Twitters and all the other social media platforms, you can do so mostly just by going to @Netroots Radio or just Netroots Radio. So there. Tom takes care of those and a lot more. Thank you, Tom. And you can also follow me on social media @JusticePutnam. And I post the show notes and links diaries on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And that's where you can access the actual reports by the actual reporters. So follow me on social media and you'll have quick access to those links. There you go. You can also follow the show on Twitter, and I keep saying I'm going to, make it more active, the social media accounts. Right now it's just on Twitter, and it's like a, placeholder, so there. But you can do so by going to @Cookbook West. But most importantly, if you could pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, Audible, that would be so grand. So please do. Alrighty. Okay, let us now tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it's by the hard-working staff at the Associated Press. Lawyers representing migrants flown to Martha's Vineyard nearly 2 years ago by Ron DeSantis can sue the charter flight company that transported them to the island off the Massachusetts coast, according to a ruling yesterday, Monday, by a federal judge in Boston. The 50 Venezuelans were sent to Martha's Vineyard from San Antonio, Texas, and had been promised work and housing opportunities. Under Monday's ruling, the migrants can proceed with their suit against Florida-based Vertol Systems Company, which had agreed to fly them to the island for hundreds of thousands of dollars. An email to the company seeking comment after the afternoon release of the ruling was not immediately returned. When are they ever? Also named in the suit is DeSantis, who ran unsuccessfully for the Republican nomination for president before dropping out in January. See what pandering can do to you? It might catch up. The U.S. District Court of Massachusetts said in its ruling that it does not have jurisdiction over DeSantis in the case. Well, that's a small little measure that we can probably, fix. Let's do it. The court, however, found that the facts of the case taken together support an inference that Vertol and the other defendants specifically targeted plaintiffs because they were Latin immigrants. Latinx. That's what the court said, Latinx. The DeSantis administration noted that the judge's order dismissed the state defendants. As we've always stated, the flights were conducted lawfully and authorized by the Florida legislature. Julia Friedland, the deputy press secretary for DeSantis, said in a statement, in an accent once again made up totally on the spot, because that's what we do when we're mocking people. We look forward to Florida's next illegal immigrant relocation flight. And we are glad to bring national attention to the crisis at the southern border. She sneered. She's sneering at us. The court also said that unlike ICE agents legitimately enforcing the country's immigration laws, the court sees no legitimate purpose for rounding up highly vulnerable individuals on false pretenses and publicly injecting them into a divisive national debate. Ivan Espinoza Madrigal, executive director for the Lawyers for Civil Rights, called the 77-page ruling a major victory in the Martha's Vineyard case. He said in a statement that the ruling sends the message that private companies can be held accountable for helping rogue state actors violate the rights of vulnerable immigrants through what it characterized as illegal and fraudulent schemes. In other words, just doing your job is no excuse. of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A weekly central Kansas newspaper and its publisher filed a federal lawsuit yesterday, Monday, over police raids last summer of its offices and the publisher's home, accusing local officials of trying to silence the paper and causing the death of the publisher's 98-year-old mother, who was also still the owner, by the way. The lawsuit did not include a specific figure for potential damages. However, in a separate notice to local officials, the paper and its publisher said they believe they are due more than $10 million. The lawsuit from the Marion County Records parent company and Eric Meyer, its editor and publisher, accuses the city of Marion, the Marion County Commission, and 5 current and former local officials of violating free speech rights and the right to be free from unreasonable law enforcement searches guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. Oh, you remember that quaint document? It's very quaint. The lawsuit also notified the defendants that Meyer and the newspaper plan to add other claims, including that officials wrongly caused the death of Meyer's mother the day after the raids, which the lawsuit attributes to a stress-induced heart attack. That puts Marion, a town of about 1,900 people, set among rolling prairie hills about 150 miles southwest of Kansas City, Missouri, at the center of a national debate over press freedoms. It also highlighted the intense divisions over a newspaper known for its aggressive coverage of local issues and its strong criticism of some officials. You know, newspapers who do their job. The city's former police chief, who later resigned among the ongoing furor, justified the August 11 raids by saying he had probable cause to believe the newspaper and a reporter potentially committed identity theft and other computer crimes in obtaining and verifying information about a local business owner's driving record. The lawsuit claims the paper and its reporters did nothing illegal. The search warrants were improper, and officials had long-standing grudges against the newspaper, which has been proven out in previous court cases. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. UPS will become the primary air cargo provider for the United States Postal Service. The Atlanta Shipping Company said on Monday yesterday that it had received an air cargo contract from the U.S. Postal Service that significantly expands an existing partnership between the two. UPS will move the majority of the air cargo in the U.S. for the Postal Service following a transition period, according to UPS. Financial terms of the deal were not disclosed, but we better find out. USPS's current air cargo contract with FedEx Corp is set to expire in late September. The agency said in a statement that its contract with UPS will be for a minimum of 5.5 years. FedEx said in a regulatory filing that it was not able to reach an agreement on mutually beneficial terms to extend its contract with USPS. The company said that negotiations ended on Friday after extensive talks. We'll follow this story as it develops. All right, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Initially, I was like, sure, come on out and take some slime if that's what you need to do. I really didn't ask many questions.
On the far eastern edge of Long Island, New York, there's a very peculiar farm that produces a lot of slime, and it's inspiring scientists to make futuristic materials.
My name is Taylor Knapp. I'm the head snail wrangler at Peconic Escargot on Long Island, New York.
So snail wrangling is a real job?
Well, it's a real made-up job, yes. I think it's funny, but it also conjures up this image of a snail ranch. And
do you have a lasso or something?
Very tiny lassos, dental floss, yeah.
Really?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was like, this job's getting weirder than I thought. This is Christopher Intagliata, and you're listening to Scientific American's Science Quickly. Today, I'm taking you on the final leg of our 3-part fascination on slime. We're going to start at a snail farm and end up in space. So back to Taylor, the snail wrangler. He starts his career in fine dining, and then one day he's trying to find fresh local snails so he can make this escargot dish, but he can't find any, and instead, he sort of finds his calling.
The initial idea was very kind of silly. I just noticed that there were no snail farms in the U.S. and that the best restaurants in America had snails on their menu, which means that they were using canned snails.
Taylor thinks that's absurd, so he starts his own snail farm. And today he raises 70,000 snails at a time, which means he's gotten really fast at snail shucking.
I can do, I'm thinking, about 600 in a half an hour.
That is one snail every 3 seconds. And nowadays, Taylor has all the fresh snails he'd ever care to cook.
We've done snail tacos and snail and mushroom tarts and ramen and all of these things. There's one preparation that's by far my favorite, and it's an old Sicilian recipe. You cook the snails in the shell, you stew them for maybe about an hour with tomato and red wine and lots of onion and garlic. It makes this dish called babalucci. You get a little messy with it. You eat it with your hands and some toothpicks and some crusty bread. It's just the best.
I mean, count me in on that. It sounds delicious. And Taylor isn't the only one cooking these snails. He says he's supplied snails to the best restaurants in the country: Danielle, the French Laundry, 11 Madison Park. But 5 years ago, he gets a phone call from this guy named Antonio Cerullo.
So anyway, he reached out, and I just thought his study that he was working on was really interesting.
The study involved searching far and wide across the animal kingdom for mucus samples. Because, Antonio says,
with every mucus sample that we can acquire and research, our global understanding of mucus becomes stronger.
Now, you might remember the researcher with the mucus library from the first episode. Antonio is that same slime guy.
And so getting to talk with him, he started to explain what he was after.
A single species of snail will produce 3 different mucus.
And it's very fascinating. I mean, it was a lot of things I've never even thought about.
Every animal on the planet uses mucus. for so many important things.
So I'd
Whether
be in
they're
there doing
glues,
my thing, and I just gave him a pen of snails, and I said, here you go to town.
So for the protective mucus, that we just simply scrape off the back with a little spatula or a glass.
I don't know a whole lot about what he was doing. I mean, there were snails moving on glass plates.
We just put out a fleet of Petri dishes and just let them crawl all over the place.
And I know they were scraping the mucus off of those glass plates.
And then for the adhesive, we just take one of those dishes, flip it upside down, and just attach the snail to it. And then we just let it hang for a while.
We just let it hang for a while. Anyway, Antonio gets all these mucus samples and takes them back to his lab, which at the time was at the City University of New York Graduate Center, and he finds that the sticky slime, the lubricating slime, and the protective slime, they all have different chemical recipes.
And the differences in the composition actually correlate with differences in measurable mechanical properties.
Meaning the slime recipe dictates its function. And all these variations of slime could be useful for all sorts of commercial products, adhesives and lubricants and coatings and beauty products. The problem is that you'd be relying on snails for the raw materials, which throws a lot of variables at your mucus recipe.
Depends on what the snail ate. It depends on the weather. Is the snail sick? There's contaminants.
This is Adam Braunschweig of Hunter College and the CUNY Graduate Center. He was Antonio's PhD advisor, and he is a chemist.
I don't think anybody has any idea what a chemist does, so it's a little vague and a little mysterious.
Adam says there are all sorts of disadvantages to commercializing mucus from animals. There are ethical issues. There are production issues. Maybe you find a rare snail that makes some really cool mucus, but it's impossible to farm. And then there are purity issues. Maybe you just don't want all that other gunk snails put in their mucus.
All the proteins, all the sugars, some of the venoms that are in there.
So his solution? He co-founded a synthetic mucus company called Nomi Materials, after Klaus Nomi, the German operatic singer with the look of a tuxedoed alien. Adam says naming the company after the singer was his way of paying tribute to what he calls the lost generation of artists, like Nomi, who were early victims of the AIDS crisis. So what is synthetic mucus exactly? Well, Adam and his colleagues have found that snail mucus has more than 100 different proteins in it, along with sugars, salts, and water. Some of those proteins, called mucins, are responsible for a lot of the magical properties of mucus, the stickiness, the lubrication, and so on. And so the idea is to make synthetic snail mucins. In the 2 years Nomi Materials has been in operation, Adam has raised $500,000 for the company and $2 million to study mucus at his CUNY Graduate Center lab. And if you're wondering who would be interested in all this, consider that a recent paper from Adam's lab analyzing snail mucus was funded in part by the Air Force Office of Scientific Research and the Office of Naval Research.
The military, they work with adhesives, they work with lubricants, they work with coatings. These are all the purposes of mucus in the natural world. And in many cases, the behavior of the mucus is superior.
So sub in synthetic mucins, Adam says, and you might end up with a better performing product that's also more sustainable. And the implications go further than that, all the way to spaceflight.
So one of the problems with the helmet dome of spacesuits is they fog up.
You can probably relate if you've ever been snorkeling or scuba diving and spit in your mask. There's mucus in spit, and mucus absorbs water and prevents fogging. So Adam and his colleagues are playing around with synthetic mucins as a coating for the helmet dome of spacesuits.
There needs to be a special coating on that dome to prevent fogging, but that also can handle the extreme environments of space. Many times these have very designer protective coatings, but NASA has designated that they still are searching for better solutions.
But it is still early days for synthetic mucus. It took 4 years for Adam and his colleagues at the CUNY Graduate Center, and later his company, to go from the idea of making synthetic mucin to actually holding a vial full of the stuff. And at this point, they can produce about 5 grams a month of pure synthetic mucin powder. That's about the same amount you'd find in 13 gallons of snail mucus, because mucus, it's mostly water. Or to put it another way, Adam says 5 grams of mucin would be enough to pump out at least 130 gallons of snail mucin anti-wrinkle cream. And that is indeed where a lot of the money is right now. The snail mucus beauty market is already estimated to be worth more than $1 billion, and counting. Because the moisturizing qualities of snail mucus, They're pretty hard to miss.
I think we have very soft hands. I don't know.
That is snail shucker Taylor Knapp again.
They get mucousy, and that's such an interesting angle that I have because I'm almost trying to eliminate mucus. We can't be giving these chefs a big slimy mass of, it's just when in the culinary world, mucus is typically not something you're going for.
And yet, Taylor says that after working with Antonio, he has been awakened to the beauty of mucus.
Yes, I have grown a deeper appreciation for the world of mucus and all of its potentials, yeah.
And I have too. I'll admit, I hadn't really given a second thought to mucus before embarking on this story. On the spectrum from wonder to disgust, I'd say I was pretty firmly in the latter camp, especially based on the many experiences I've had wiping stalactites of snot from my toddler's nose, something she and I both hate. But when I came across Antonio's work, and I found out he had a whole library of mucus and was pretty obsessed with the stuff, well, I was intrigued. And learning about how essential mucus is, not just for our own health, but for the functioning of literally every animal on Earth, how could I not become sort of obsessed with it too? Mucus truly is magical, and I hope you now think so too. Science Quickly is produced by Jeff Del Vicio, Rachel Feltman, and Kelso Harper. It's edited by Madison Goldberg, Ella Fetter, and Alexa Lim. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and for more science news, go to scientificamerican.com. For Science Quickly, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In a victory for voters, Montana's Supreme Court upheld a lower court decision March 27th, striking down 4 anti-voter laws which disproportionately impacted younger, disabled, and Native American voters. Montana's constitution contains a right of suffrage clause, which reads, "All elections shall be free and open, and no power, civil or military, shall at any time interfere to prevent the free exercise of the right of suffrage." The court affirmed that the legislature's 4 bills passed in 2021 infringed on that right, among other deficiencies. HB 176 eliminated the ability to register and vote on Election Day, in place since 2005 and often used by students and first-time Native American voters. HB 530 banned paid ballot collection, making it impossible for paid get-out-the-vote workers to assist Native voters, students, the elderly, and the disabled in submitting their mail-in ballots. HB 506 prohibited sending mail-in ballots to voters who would be 18 by Election Day, and SB 169 ended the use of official student IDs as identification for voting purposes, revoking a law which had been in place for almost 20 years. Election integrity activists began pushing such cookie-cutter suppression laws after a robust turnout of younger voters in recent elections. We have links to the decision and the groups taking action at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day workers at the Hershey candy plant in Hershey, Pennsylvania, sat down. CIO organizers for the new United Chocolate Workers Union reported that anywhere from 2,000 to 2,400 workers were on strike. Hershey was a company town where streets were named Chocolate and Coca Avenue. Housing was built for workers, and the company funded public education and transit service. But the company also sought to monitor and control workers' behavior on their off time and showed favoritism in hiring and wages. The Great Depression created dire conditions even in the sweetest place on earth. Hours and bonuses had been cut. Workers grew increasingly frustrated with production speed up and unpredictable work schedules, all while Hershey still drew handsome profits. The company initially raised wages after meeting with the union, but then laid off the organizers 3 months later. That's when the workers shut off their machines and occupied the plant. The company refused to negotiate unless the workers left. By April 7th, dairy farmers became incensed at the loss of income. They mobilized with anti-union company forces to storm the factory and drive the strikers out. Organizers had agreed to end the strike in order to resume negotiations and avert violence. But the anti-union forces attacked the sit-downers with bats, whips, clubs, and hammers. 3 CIO organizers were singled out and severely beaten. Governor George Earle condemned the attack and blamed the county sheriff for suppressing labor rather than preventing mob rule. The strike was smashed. Attempts to install a company union failed soon after. Hershey would be one of the first candy companies to be organized when the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union won recognition 2 years later. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of 78 to 80 or so. And then we're going to drop down tonight to the mid-40s, but today we're going to have sunny conditions throughout the day. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, then partly cloudy this evening, becoming cloudy overnight with a slight chance of a shower late, maybe even some snow flurries. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And when I say snow flurries, what I mean is at elevation, because here at the mothership we'll be in the mid-40s. Tomorrow we're expecting light rain early with highs only around 48. Then remaining cloudy with showers in the afternoon. And winds will be light and variable. And that is when we're expecting a few more snow flurries overnight, because temperatures here at the mothership are slated to be about 34, which means it could be much cooler. And there could still be some snowflakes afloating. We'll find out about that later on. Grass pollen has now registered as moderate here in our town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 20 parts per million. And I always like to remind folks here in Oregon, when we have really good air this time of year, people want to burn their trash because the air just smells too good unless they do that. And they can't stand good air, apparently. Oh my, the daytime UV index has now notched up into the high range at level 6, so we all should take care. I wear a hat, and I slather on the SPF 30. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.25 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and that relative humidity remains at 100%. Could be muggy. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 58 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 57 degrees and cloudy with a thunderstorm advisory with electrical disruptions possible because of heavy thunderstorm activity. Rome is 66 degrees and sunny. Bagram is 50 with light rain. Hong Kong is 65 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 58 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 and partly cloudy with a small craft advisory. Looks like Chicago, Illinois is 44 and cloudy, also with a small craft advisory. And New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit, rain showers with a gale warning. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Leon of the Associated Press's World Desk brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The president of the U.S.-funded Radio Free Asia said that its Hong Kong bureau has been closed because of safety concerns under a new national security law, deepening concerns about the city's media freedoms. Bei Fang, the president of RFA, said in a statement that it will no longer have full-time staff in Hong Kong, though it would retain its official media registration. Actions by Hong Kong authorities include referring to Radio Free Asia as a foreign force, raise serious questions about our ability to operate in safety with the enactment of Article 23, Fang said. RFA's move is widely seen as a reflection of the city's narrowing space for a free space, following the enactment of the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance, locally also known as Article 23 legislation. Representative Gregory Meeks, the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, expressed concern over Radio Free Asia's shutdown and said the new law not only represents a significant escalation in efforts by Hong Kong and Beijing authorities to suppress free speech and expression, but also undermines media freedom and the public's ability to obtain fact-based information. Stephanie Liechtenstein of The Associated Press World Desk brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The arrest in recent days of a former Austrian intelligence officer on serious allegations of spying for Russia suggests that Austria needs to boost its security to thwart Russian infiltration. Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer said yesterday, Monday, the allegations against Egisto Ott, who worked for a now-defunct intelligence agency and whose arrest was announced on Friday, are grave and have prompted the Chancellor to call a meeting next week of Austria's National Security Council, he said. Ott has denied wrongdoing. Nehammer said he would convene the National Security Council on Tuesday of next week. The council, which consists of government ministers as well as members of all political parties, is a key advisory on matters of security and defense. The Vienna Criminal Court on Monday yesterday approved a 14-day extension for holding Ott in custody on the charges against him. The Vienna Public Prosecutor's Office declined to provide details about the spying allegations, but said that they relate to abuse of office and were, quote, detrimental to Austria. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.